Hey there, comic book friends. How's it going? I'm Travis, and I have Mike here with me, and we're going to talk some comics today and have a good night just talking about whatever. This is going to be even more off the cuff than normal, I think. We're going to talk about whatever books we decide to drag out, and wherever it goes, it goes. Kind of a deal. So, what do we want to talk about first? You said you got quite a bit to talk about this time around, as far as books go. So,
Yeah, yeah.
let's jump right in. What do you want to talk about first?
Marvel. I know you're Mr. Marvel.
I am. I actually have a Marvel title this week, so ha!
All right. Well, all right. What did you get for Marvel?
Captain America. I'm
Art?
still I'm still reading Captain America.
Okay.
So Captain America. This is issue 23. I don't know when this restarts. I know it starts out with the new number one at some point because we all know that at some point we get a black Captain America, which is horribly scandalous, I guess, or whatever. I
I
actually
think,
really, I actually
yeah.
really like this issue.
Yep.
If you read the first part of Remender's run on this, this all brings it back around, which I guess is kind of how Remender writes. He writes sometimes writes a longer story with this kind of turnaround coming back kind of a thing, and in this it happens to be the case. Some of the people that he met and people he interacted with while he was in Dimension Z show back up in this. So two kind of big. One of them's not quite so shocking. The guy that's on the cover here isn't quite so shocking. There's a reveal at the very end that makes you go, "Oh wow," or it makes you, if you're a cynic, go, "Yeah, nobody ever dies in comics," and so
All right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I think when the new big arc, the Access or whatever they're doing, it's supposed to be the next game changer, and
yeah,
I
you're
think
right.
that's when Thor becomes a woman. That's when Cap goes to the Falcon, and Iron Man has the Superior. So that's when I think the big twist happens. Is at the end of that.
Hmm. Yeah, and I'll quit getting the book then. I think. I mean, for me, getting Captain America has just been kind of an experiment in reading something different for me.
All right.
I'm not a Captain America fan as a general rule, but I've been enjoying it. Looking forward to seeing how this whole arc turns out in the end of it. There's more relationship stuff between the Falcon and um, Jet Black, which of course, a couple months ago there was all
Yeah.
that stuff on the Twitter and whatnot about Fire and Remender because of course they had slept together. Oh my gosh, whatever, whatever. So obviously that didn't scare him away from the storyline that he wants to tell. So and I actually kind of like that part. That part's actually interesting. But then I like the Jet Black character. I mean, they could put a book out of just her, and I'd be inclined to buy it because I think she's an interesting character, more so than most of the other characters in the book. So, yeah.
Was it Remender or was it the more space-like aspect of it that got you onto Captain America, or was it just you wanted to try and pick up one of the big ones?
It was the sci-fi aspect of it. I didn't get the first two or three issues to start out with, and enough other people, Craig from First Family of Comics, and Scott Constant Bromstar, they were talking about Captain America when it first started out, and was kind of talking about the fact that it had this kind of sci-fi bent to it, and him kind of even more so a man out of time, not just out of time, but a man out of dimension, basically. And I thought, that might be kind of cool, Captain America in a sci-fi setting, and the other Remender books were starting to come out, the independent books, because that's really what I've read of Remender's. I haven't read any of his other, Marvel work or anything, and I was liking that stuff. So I thought, well, okay, I'll check this out and see what it's like. And I really liked the kind of sci-fi bent, him being in this other dimension and all that struggle and whatnot, which I know there were lots of Captain America fans who didn't like that because he kind of came across right. He came across as weaker, right? He came across as being kind of, whereas he's always the man with the plan. He always has this tactical plan, and he is kind of struggling
Yeah.
in Dimension Z. And I actually see, for me, I liked that because it's like Superman. If Captain America's kind of the same way. If he's always portrayed in the exact same fashion all the time, to me he's one dimensional. It isn't, the ultimate soldier. Yeah, so what? I guess is.
I guess I'm not a big fan of sci-fi
Oh, cool.
in my comics so much. I could see that changing. I mean, I did like Saga, uh, but I guess it's just where everybody they just seem to draw how weird it is, and then every once in a while somebody weirded out by how someone looks, but
Uh,
there's
right.
no norms. I don't understand that aspect, or they play around too much with the physics. They play too loosely. They just don't care, and so I think those are the things sometimes that throw me off of it.
Hmm.
And so yeah, with Captain America, I like my World War II, or I like him battling as Hydra. It's the don't think, just read book. Like, oh, he beat up 800 guys with a shield once again. All right, well, throw it.
Right.
Uh, so I probably don't appreciate him enough for that reason. I liked when he went back to World War II and explored the beginning. The almost
Hmm.
like the Batman Year One kind of thing. So.
Hmm.
Um, but no, that's and that's why I think I like hearing that from you when you guys would talk about it, because I'm not going to pick it up, but I get to pick all the little things that I do find interesting, and if I want to go back, I can enjoy the storyline.
Right. Right. And then I don't know what people's opinion of oh heck, what is his name? The villain that starts with a
Uh,
Z.
Zemo, or I mean, or no,
No.
it's the robot, wasn't it? The
Yeah, well, he's got
Zoloft.
the Zola, right? I don't know. I don't know how he's been portrayed in the past and whatnot.
Yeah,
But what I got from here, and like I said, I mean, I do know Marvel stuff, but my Marvel is like X-Men and that kind of the mutant wheelhouse is where most of my little bit of it Avengers, but mostly the mutant wheelhouse is where my most of my Marvel experience is. So I'm not real familiar with a lot of Captain America's his gallery of villains. And I
right.
don't know how the guy was portrayed in the past, but he's an extremely creepy um, guy in this. I mean, he's this kind of fringe, Hydra Nazi kind of a guy who is chopping up things and putting them back together in different ways, trying to create the ultimate beings and whatnot.
Yeah,
I mean, he's taken the whole what we know of factual World War II with like Mengele and some of those other crazy scientists that worked for the Nazis who did all kinds of horrible stuff to the Jews, and he just takes it just even a step further. And so what background we got of him in this and whatnot just really makes him to be a really insidious and sinister kind of a character. So I think he's kind of cool. I mean, he just looks strange too at the fact that he's his head's in the chest and whatnot just makes him look strange.
yeah,
And this modern take on him, I don't know, it's cool. It's a character that I've always looked at in the past. I've seen the villain,
yeah,
and you see a picture of him and I go, that's just kind of silly, whatever. But I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah,
But really interesting. And of course, early on in this run, Captain America gets infected with a virus that that Z gives him, and he ends up with that damn face in his own chest
right.
through part of it. And that to me that was really cool. That whole him having to deal with this consciousness in his chest that's not his
Yeah.
own, that's screwing with him all the time. That whole battle I thought was pretty cool. But so
And
like I said, this is I've enjoyed this run. Um,
the art was Ramos or Ramada Jr.
Rod Jr. was the first
Okay,
12 issues or so through the Dimension Z
yeah,
stuff which of course is either really horrible or kind of fun. Um, is where a lot of people's aspects. His children are horrific. His children are big-headed, small-bodied, strange-looking,
yeah.
dwarf-like people. It seems. Um,
But
but I
like
like
She-Hulk, it's a style. I
it.
mean,
It is, and it is, and either you like it or you don't like it. And for me,
yeah,
there's aspects of it I like. I like his Dimension Z and the mutants that are there, the mutate people and whatnot. It works great because his style is just kind of out there, and so it matches up to what I envision a bunch of weird mutated races living in this pocket dimension. That works fine. But like I said, when he starts drawing like Steve Rogers as a small child,
yeah,
or he draws Captain America's child, Ian, back
right.
in those early issues, oh, you just kind of look at it and go, this is just wrong. It's like you look at it and you go, has this man ever seen a child in his life? Because this is not what children look like. But and the latest artist isn't bad, but it's I don't know. It feels pretty standard, pretty standard superhero
Oh,
affair.
yeah,
So nothing that really excites me. It does tell the story. The panels are somewhat dynamic. The mutates to me look like I don't know, guys in dinosaur suits with sharp teeth, but
Yeah. Or the
yeah,
mole man feel. It's
yeah,
everything's
yeah,
that muddy brown, just humanoid shaped. Yeah.
yeah. But I'm curious to see how this ends. I am fascinated by the whole idea of Steve Rogers now has lost his super serum. He's now an old man. He actually is the age that he would be if he had aged like a normal person. So he's obviously got to be what in his 80s or 90s.
Yeah.
If he was in his 19 or
18.
20, whatever,
Yeah.
18, 19, whatever it was when he got drafted into the army and became Captain America. So he's an old guy now, and that interests me. But unfortunately, um, going forward, once the new book starts, he's going to be in it, and it's going to address it some, but it doesn't sound like it's going to address it in the fashion I would want to. I would still want the book focused on him having to deal with being an old man. And I know a lot of people would go, "Oh my God, that sounds so horribly boring. Why would I read a comic book about a 90-year-old guy?" But I think that would be very fascinating to be in the head of Steve Rogers, trying to figure out how does he move forward the rest of his life, knowing that now his time is really flying it. It's not like it's not like there's a chance he's gonna die out there fighting somewhere. Well, I guess maybe if villains know that he's an old guy now, they can beat him up really easy, maybe. But I don't know. To me, that would be an interesting story, and I don't think we're gonna get that, unfortunately. So,
Yeah.
which is why I'm not gonna get it.
That is the thing, is you always think that you come up with this really great idea, Travis. You're like suicide risk and all them. You're like, wouldn't it be great? This guy doesn't have power, and then this, and we're all like, yeah, that's gonna be great. And then it's not the way you want it. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
it's an okay book now. Now it's okay.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Well, I always wanted to write the book for me. That's what it's all
Yeah.
about, right? I am a comic book fan, therefore you should
Yeah.
make the books for me, not anybody else. For me.
yeah. I always hear that disappointment. We all agree with you too. It's like, yeah, that's a great idea. It's gonna happen that way, right? Because that's the best way, right? No.
Yeah. And I'm not saying the next whatever it's going to be, that could be really cool. That could be,
Yeah.
the Falcon as as Captain America, and whatever comes of that could be great. Kind of like I said, though, Captain America was just kind of an experiment. Plus, it was sci-fi at the time, so
Yeah.
and I hung around after that arc was done just to kind of see. Well, I've gotten it so far. Let's see what it's like to read just a normal Captain America I would guess would be considered a normal Captain America type story.
Yeah.
And I did not like the last arc, really,
Okay.
where he's kind of dealing with Shield and
Yeah.
all that stuff that I'm not, quite honestly, I'm not interested in. I'm not interested in Shield at all. That doesn't interest me. So I like those old Steranko Shield comic books because they were cool, they were Steranko and had a kind of a 60s vibe to them that makes them cool in their own sense for when they were produced. But no, modern Shield doesn't interest me at all. So,
All right. Yeah.
So what'd you get for some Marvel books?
I got the Undercover Avengers. This is 3 months later. It seems to be the new thing now. It's always time jumping. It's 5 years in the future, 5 years back, or whatever. Now it's just 3 months. They're undercover, and first off, this Ty Walker, Tigh Walker, with his art, I always feel that it's like he thinks everybody has a broken nose. Everybody had kind of a slightly smushed, kind of pushed down nose. That was the most disruptive thing, and it's a new artist.
Does it give credit to an inker or a finisher on that book, or is it just him on art?
Colorist is
okay.
Jean-Francois Boulet.
Okay, so he's inking his own stuff. Okay.
Yeah. So that was the only thing and I don't know enough about inking and penciling and all that but it does seem like it's his art that. And most of it's fairly decent, but it's just right when he gets into the nose, that's the trouble he's tackling. So hope he works on that. But for the story-wise, they're infiltrating the Masters of Evil. Zemo has his group underground, and the youth have been separated into like different groups, and so they're trying to get together and tell each other, remember, we're doing this undercover. Let's go ahead and play along, and then we're gonna, spring a trap. And they finally get a hold of Pym and let him know what's going on. And when they go to talk to Deathlocket, she turns on him, and they have half of their people who are trying to fight the Masters of Evil, and the other half who are trying to be the Masters of Evil. Like, they've given up. They want to be criminals now. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. And I really think it's interesting because this is issue 8, and I think it's supposed to be, I don't know, at least a 20-something issue. It's not a limited series or anything, but they already have S.H.I.E.L.D., the very last page. They have S.H.I.E.L.D. and Centurion, or Superior, what's his name?
Is that Captain Britain? No.
Yeah, Captain Britain's there too. Their version of Superman, I'm blanking on his name, he's of an Avenger now.
Right.
They keep pulling him out of whatever dimension, he's always a different character.
Spider-Woman there, yeah.
Yeah, and Spider-Woman, yeah. And they're coming to rescue him, and Zemo is ready for it. Like, he's ready for the good guys to show up. He says, if nothing else, they're predictable. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes, how they keep going with the children. I've liked it. I've liked Hopeless's path so far with the Avengers Arena and now this. So I've enjoyed it quite a bit.
Cool.
Did you have another Marvel, or was Captain your only one?
Captain was my only Marvel this week.
All right. T-Bolts versus Punisher. In this one, Punisher is continuing to try and take them down one at a time. Next one up was Deadpool. And Deadpool said, I already quit. I'm married. I'm not doing this anymore. He goes, well, I'm glad to hear that. But just in case, and you see him, he has all these containers he keeps sealing as he's talking to them and putting them in the freezer. Yeah, in the freezer. And he's like, well, can you at least punch a couple holes in it? And he's like, no. And he seals it up and puts it in the freezer with his head. And he's like, you're a real jerk, Frank.
Nice.
Yeah, so he does a good job writing this. I mean, he's got the characters down. Frank then goes after Red Hulk. He figures out a way to take out Ghost Rider by going through some of his history, and by doing so, separates the spirit from Johnny himself. This is the incarnation of Johnny. It was good. And then Elektra shows up right at the end, and he says, well, you already did half the work for me. I didn't have to go hunting for you. So it looks like he's going to pick off all of them and then go after Red Hulk last. The Avengers know about it, and so now they're trying to figure out what they need to do to help him or to stop him. And it's Hawkeye, and at this point, Hawkeye, of course, it's out of the continuity of Fraction, so he can hear, he can see, he's running with S.H.I.E.L.D. Once again, it's that pet love of mine. It's a good story. It's fun. It's my superior foes. It's probably the best way to put it. So
cool.
And that's all I got from Marvel then.
Okay. Well, just to put out there, I don't know if people are commenting or not. I think they are. So far, my comment feed is not coming through. So if I'm not responding to you, because I was going to make a point of paying a little close attention to comments this week, it's not that I'm ignoring you. I know there's 9 of you out there watching. Appreciate it. I just, for whatever reason, my comment feed isn't putting anything through. So hopefully at some point it does. At any rate. So I haven't heard any Marvel news or anything that's so gripping that, like, earth-shattering, whatever kind of stuff. Have you? I mean, as far as Marvel?
No, because it's like Squadron Supreme Hyperion. That's what I was trying to think of previously with the Avengers. Evidently, they're going to give him a stretch in the Avengers comic book and try and give his character a little bit more depth. I guess they're really going to try and use them.
Oh, really?
So
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
so I don't know if it's going to be a 4-part arc or how much they're going to explore, but it sounds like they're going to give him some weight. So I guess they need a Superman. So
Sure. Why not?
yeah, that's about all I know for news. Otherwise, besides that,
Yeah, I haven't really. I don't know. I mean, I guess 2 or 3 weeks out from San Diego Comic Con, we're probably not going to get lots of news. I guess. Um,
right. And until
but
the
it,
shows start, until this Axis, of evil or whatever that
yeah,
Marvel's
because
going
that's
to
the
do.
next big event, right? That's after the
Yeah,
original Sin. That's the next big thing is going to be to.
yeah. Because I'm trying to think. I think they had a picture. Yeah, like Avengers, X-Men, Axis, and they kind of show some pictures of Wanda and Doom and all them. So I've seen it ties into where Red Skull has like the Onslaught look now,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's got something to do with that. It's tied in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not following it that close. I like, I guess, some of the Fringe books, so that
Right.
aren't being touched by these arcs. But
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not getting anywhere near any of those books. I guess so. Or trying not to. I don't want to get into that quagmire of continuity or lack of or whatever. I don't know. But so, you pick up any DC books this week?
no DC for me.
Oh, good. You can listen to me talk DC books then.
I'd be happy to.
So, we'll start out with the new Suicide Squad, not Suicide Squad, but the new Suicide Squad, issue number 2. For those of you diehard listeners who listened to our conversation about issue 1 with Task Force XL and just how horrible that issue was, in my opinion, this issue is a little better. I don't know that it's a lot better. I've already dropped it off my poll. I will inevitably get a couple issues because, of course, I poll a couple months in advance. Um, yeah, it didn't really. It was less cheesy. The first issue had lots of really dumb, cheesy lines in it. But this was almost as annoying because the people who delivered the dumb, cheesy lines in the first issue are on comms talking to the squad the entire time, and it's still kind of dumb as far as that goes. I'm not really caring for the rivalry between Joker's daughter and Harley Quinn. I mean, I get it. I get the idea of why the rivalry's there, but to me that also leads to I don't understand why both these people would be on the same team. It makes no sense. They fill the exact same role. From a writing standpoint, it doesn't make sense. If I was building a team of supervillains to do work for me, it makes no sense. I don't know. So I don't have a lot of positive to say about it. I just wasn't really into it. Like I said, the best thing I could say about the new Suicide Squad is that they gave Deadshot his mustache back. So that's the upside. I want there to be more to this book than what there is. It was an improvement over last week's, but yeah, I don't know. I don't. There's a lot about this book that I could question because you haven't read it. I don't know if we have that necessarily that conversation with you. I just don't know what the motivation is for these characters to be doing this. In the past, the motivation was they all had bombs planted in them. They were working off their penance. That's not necessarily the case this time around. So I don't, in the case of like Black Manta, I like the character. He's here because he's got nothing else to do, really. I mean, he actually earned freedom. He got a clean slate.
Yeah.
Right, but he doesn't know what to do with that. So he basically volunteers to become part of the Suicide Squad. So he's basically kind of like a version of Bronze Tiger from the old Suicide Squad. More there because, look, this is just what I do than anything else. I like the character. I like most of these characters individually. I just the makeup of them in this team doesn't. And I know they're new, so they're kind of supposed to be kind of clashing with each other, but it just doesn't make sense on a lot of levels for me. So I'm not too excited about it.
Yeah, and I mean, I grabbed the first issue. I flipped through this one, and it didn't jump as a big change. What made the new 52 sell was they had some throwaway characters that, if they hated them enough, they just killed them. I mean,
Just kill 'em, right?
they would be on a mission, and it's like, oh, by the way, we need to have a patsy. Blam, blam, you're dead. And I'm like,
Right.
oh, all right, Deadshot didn't like him, and
Yeah.
they don't do that, and then they hate each other, but they don't hate each other so much as they will kill. But now it's a slap fest, and I mean,
Yeah.
you don't want that either. So
Yeah, and they're not giving me like I said, my biggest gripe with it right now is they're not giving me a reason as to why they have the people on their team. I mean, other than to make the team bigger and flashier. I mean, the characters even in the book in the first issue mention why am I here if you're here? I mean, why is Deadshot there and Deathstroke? I mean, because they're both. I mean, obviously Deathstroke covers a much wider gambit of skill set than what Deadshot does. But if you've got one sniper, why do you need another one? Kind of, it makes no sense. Harley Quinn and Joker's daughter, they fill the same role. It doesn't. I don't know. And so I just.
Yeah, the Defense Department guy, it's like a bad version of punk rock Jesus Slade, or it's the reality show guy. I mean, it's like he wanted to be a producer or whatever. He puts together this beautiful team that he wants. They're undercover, but it's like he wants them to be seen or to be known because he wants this super flashy, awesome team.
Right.
So it's all these new, trendy people that it kind of took away everything that used to be the heart of that team. It was the down and outs, the lowlies, the losers that you either wanted to see rise up or die.
Right. And starting the book out this way is somewhat okay as long as they're going to very quickly rectify the questions that we have about why is the team what is and whatnot. You got this new guy who's from the Treasury Department, has no clue, throws in this huge mix of the more the better kind of a thing, and then it's just a total mess. And maybe I'm not being patient enough to read enough issues to allow the storytellers to tell that story, but enough things don't grab me about it that I guess I don't care enough or something. I don't know.
Anyway. I think recently we've seen too many of these books that don't have enough grasp in the first issue to make you want to pick up the second.
Right.
This book actually makes me more excited about the new Batwoman team.
Oh, right. Right, where she's gonna in a couple months she'll be teaming up with Clayface and Ragman and some of those people here. Yeah, that's gonna be interesting.
Because of Secret Six and previous Suicide Squads, that's what makes me excited for that book and not for this one.
Right, exactly. Yeah, hopefully those other books will deliver. Anyway, my comments have started working, or at least briefly started working. So Mike Yakunt guy is here. I guess his first time getting to watch us live. That's cool. And of course Sherpanaut is here. Saying boom shakalaka, and also want to know if we've discussed the Aquaman film announcement yet. No, we haven't. We'll get to that though. We'll get to that as soon as we're done talking books. We'll talk about that movie announcement. I don't know how much we'll have to say about it, but we'll have something to say about it.
We'll just start lying.
Yeah, we'll just whatever. Another DC book, Batgirl issue 34. This is the final issue of Gail Simone's run on the book. She nice and neatly ties up all the storyline that she created in Batgirl in Gotham that has to do with Batgirl. Everything from her thinking that she's murdered her brother to the villains that Gail Simone created that were specifically designed to be kind of the nemesis for Batgirl. Pretty much all that gets tied up in here in kind of a giant war that never really completely happens because Batgirl's on top of it and has a plan in place. So the bad guys' plans never really come to fruition. We get to see little cameos of a lot of Gail Simone creations in this. Her the characters from what was the other book she was just on? It came out at the same time the Green Team came out, and I can't remember what the heck it's called. It had to do with the 99%. Dang it, can't remember what they're called. They're in this. They're in this because they're kind of buddies with Batgirl, so she enlists them. One of the things I think is interesting is anybody who's a long-term Gail Simone, Birds of Prey fan, Misfit shows up in this issue. This is the first place I think we've seen Misfit in the New 52, which is cool. I like that character. Heck knows if they'll ever actually use her and whatnot in it. But I think kind of a fan service to those of us who are long-term Gale, Batgirl, Birds of Prey type fans. But this thing all gets neatly cleaned up. She's given some information at the end of this that kind of puts her in kind of a happy place in her life where she thinks she can now just kind of move on. And she sets it up to where, for the new creators who are going to be on the team with this new direction. I mean, she says at the end of this, I'm moving. She talks to her roommate. Hey, roommate, you want to move with me? We're changing. And that's where it sets up at. Of course, the next issue is issue number 35. Actually, I don't know. It's not 35. It's issue 1, Batgirl Futures End, because all of the DC books for next month are all this 5-year jump. No idea what that's going to be like. But the next issue of the current run that we'll get of this is going to be the whole new team on it with the new version of Barbara with her new costume in kind of a new place with a new attitude and all that kind of stuff. So I think it was a fine end to the run. It like I said, it did cleanly tie everything up, and it wasn't so. I mean, it was convenient, but it wasn't so clean that you kind of went, oh, that just, obviously they just wrote this issue off. I mean, Gail did do a decent job of squaring everything away without it feeling like she was rushed to tie it off because somebody else was doing it. And luckily it didn't leave all this stuff dangling, and then it never gets addressed because obviously the new creative team is going to take the book in a completely different direction with a different attitude, and we just make kind of an ugly transition. So this does give us a decent transition.
Yeah, I did see on Twitter that Gail's like, people have it wrong. She supports this new team, and that she's happy with this. So
I think so. Yeah, I think so too.
I was kind of hoping though that last page, she fell down the steps and then they put her back into the wheelchair.
Oh yeah, I mean, at Oracle, that'd be awesome. Have somebody else be Batgirl. I'd be all for that. Yeah. I'd be all for that.
So they sneak it in.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, well, it would surprise me if Gail was against this new take on Batgirl, because it's kind of, I think it's hitting on a lot of the stuff that Gail thinks there should be more of out there anyway. This kind of younger, fresher face female heroine. Gail's version of Batgirl has been very dark. I mean, I think largely that has to do with, I think, the original mandate that DC had when they put the New 52 out. All their books are very dark and very sinister and that sort of thing. And so that's what she worked with. But they kind of changed that now too. Really, the Batman line is interestingly changing. If you're into the Bat family and all the Bat books and whatnot, of course we lost Mike Martz as the Batman editor, him being the editor of the whole workings of the Bat universe. And I know that we had some discussions when that happened about what's that going to be like. He's been such a solid person, and really the Bat line has been a pretty solid franchise. What's going to be like if they get a new editor? We get this Doyle guy who was a Vertigo editor, younger guy. What's it going to be like? Superheroes isn't been his thing, and now he's come on, and now we've suddenly got the introduction of like 3 new Bat titles. You got the Gotham Academy and Batgirl in particular, which both books, obviously we haven't actually seen them yet, but from what little bits and pieces we've seen of them, we've heard people talk about them, they're a completely different style of book. They're a much more fresh face, younger kind of a vibe to them, which I think is great. And then, of course, lately we just had this announcement of another Batman, another not Batman, but another Gotham book. Was it Gotham at Midnight or Gotham by Midnight? Something along those lines. That is going to be, it's going to be Jim Corrigan, who is the Spectre, and a group of a group of policemen and consultants that work the night shift at Gotham PD, and they kind of take on the stuff that Batman kind of avoids, the kind of bump in the night stuff that Batman supposedly avoids or doesn't have the skill set to deal with because it's more spiritual or magical based kind of thing. I'm actually excited by it. I know a lot of people are like, oh Christ, another Batman book. Like we need another Batman book, like we need more holes in our head. But I think it's along the same lines of like the Gotham Academy. They're just using the name Gotham as a way to trick people into trying it. The people who are afraid to get outside of the Bat box, this is a way to get them to read a book that's not a Batman book, it's not a Batman-oriented book, and read something that's a little different. Because, I mean, they could have put this anywhere, I think, probably, but Gotham's got such a big name that it helps sell the book. So from a business standpoint, it makes sense to do that.
Gotham by Midnight, do you feel it's going to have a taste or a reminder of like Mignola stuff, this Bureau of Paranormal Research? Is it going to touch on magic and that kind of stuff? Or?
Sure, it's going to, but obviously it's still going to be I would assume it's still going to be a police procedural in some sense because it literally has Jim Corrigan is a detective for the Gotham PD. I can't remember the name of the other characters. Another female detective who's definitely part of it. There's I think a male doctor who is a consultant. There's a nun who's a religious consultant, and there's like somebody else. There's like a fifth member.
Boy.
No, but it's gonna be. I mean, and of course that book has got it's got Ben Templesmith doing the artwork on it, which everybody knows if you've watched any of my videos. I have an opinion on Templesmith. Love the guy. Love his artwork. I think that he is unreliable on an ongoing series. Now, nothing says he's going to do 12, 14, 100 issues of this book. I suspect he's signed himself up for like 5 issues, and that's fine. I think those 5 issues are going to be crazy and cool. But I'm going into it knowing, because of his history, that that's how many issues it's going to be, and I'm hoping that he's up front and says, this is how many I'm going to do. I can't do any more than this. So weird stuff doesn't happen. There's not a scramble to find the next artist, like some of the last stuff that he's done when he's worked with other people.
Because doesn't he say he gets bored? It's like 5 and I'm done because I want to do something different.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, that's great if that's what he's going to do. It's just it should be. I mean, I think it's best for all of us to know that up front if that's going to be the case. Because if you're only getting the book for his work, then that makes maybe you think, well, maybe I'll just wait until the trade comes out and I get that first 5 issues and then I don't bother with the rest of it because I'm just out for Templesmith's art, kind of a thing. I think it's really awesome that DC is putting his style of art, him in particular, on a mainstream, well, it's a mainstream DC book because I mean, it's a regular title. It's going to be an ongoing title. That's awesome. Not to say that that DC style, if they have a style, is bad, but I think it's great to start getting more of a indie vibe or an indie look to some of these books, and we're starting to get a little more of that. And I think both of the big 2 companies would benefit greatly by venturing out a little bit, so everything doesn't look like the homogenized superhero comic. And certainly nothing about Ben Templesmith's art is standard homogenized looking. So it's going to be, those first issues should just be great for the art alone, I would think. So I'm excited. I'm excited for the book, but I would be excited for the book if it was Central City by Midnight, or if it was Seattle by Midnight, or if it was Pearl City by Midnight. It wouldn't matter to me if it was Gotham or not. I like the DC kind of magical based characters anyway, so I would have been okay if it would have just been a Spectre book too, though. If they just flat out made a Spectre book, I would have been okay with that too. So
They just need the Batman to sell the original, at least the first couple copies.
Well, I don't even know if Batman will be in it
Well, the name,
per
yeah.
se, but at least the Gotham part of it. I think it's just that Gotham is the easiest way for them to sell it because everybody recognizes Gotham. I mean, if you're not a DC fan, you know Gotham. So,
Yeah.
so that's the big thing as far as that. So, yeah, as far as I think it's interesting. This new editor is taking the Bat books potentially a different direction. Some of them are opening up the Bat universe to other stuff. And I agree that there's probably way too many Bat family books, but that's what's selling. People are buying it.
Yeah.
So and for me, I'll say there's too many, but if they keep putting out good ones, I'm going to keep getting them. If they're bad, I'm not. I read a lot of Batman, which you're going to see because, of course, I have 2 more books to talk about, and they're both Batman-oriented books. But I'm not going to get them if they're bad. But I'm interested in the new books. So they're going to tell me a good story. Great. So.
Well, and I know when it comes to looking at independent, sometimes, you have to wonder, well, what am I getting myself into with any independent book?
Right.
So with these, I mean, at least you're like, well, at least it's Gotham. I know Gotham. I'm using that frame of reference, so I know the city. And I do think that helps out. As somebody who doesn't do a lot of DC, if I were to be tentative about it, I'm like, well, at least I know Gotham. I know who potentially could show up and what's going on. So
right. And like I said, I think that's one of the biggest reasons why it's in Gotham is for the people who don't want to venture out, like I said, too far outside of the box. That seems somewhat safe place to potentially plant my money at. So yeah. So Batman Eternal, of course, I talk about this every week. This issue has an artist I'm unfamiliar with. His art is okay-ish. It seems very muddy, very sketchy. It was an okay issue. It mostly had to do with the South America stuff going on. A little bit of Killer Croc. I like Killer Croc. So that part of it was cool. But not anything exceptionally happened in this one. In this issue, the seeds are planted for Harper Row to be trained as a superhero in this one. That's, I think, the most significant thing I take away from this issue is Red Robin is basically going, yeah, she's got crazy mad skills when it comes to tech stuff, and now we just need to teach her the rest of it, And is she going to be ready? And of course, she's like, hell yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it. So that's cool. That we're gonna see the rest of the beginnings of her becoming Bluebird. I think is ultimately what she ends up being called in it. There's an interesting part here. There's a fight between Red Hood and Batgirl. She envisions Batgirl as being kind of mentally manipulated, and she kind of thinks that Red Hood is the Joker. And his way of kind of talking her down is interesting. He basically forces her to use her photographic memory to remember a specific intimate, and not in a romantic sense, but moment that these two characters had in their past. And in the process of her with her photographic memory, remembering all that stuff, it basically shakes her from this mental enslavement that she's in. So, but it was kind of a cool part too. But,
my wife just came to check on me. The cats were fighting, and one made a weird noise as he's leaving. So she's wondering what's going on, and I had to let her know that they're fighting. So, in case anyone else heard these weird moans, it wasn't me.
I wasn't gonna say anything.
Right.
And then finally, Batman issue number 34, a non-zero year Batman.
Oh, happy day.
Yeah, you know what? It's got Snyder on the cover and Duggan and Scalera. I like Scalera's artwork in this. It's a little bit to me a little bit reminiscent of Murphy's artwork. It's reminiscent of Murphy's artwork, and it's also reminiscent of Dustin Nguyen's artwork. It's like a combination of those two. The faces look more Dustin Nguyen oriented, but the artwork has a very, to me, a very Sean Murphy look to it, and I actually really liked it. I actually really like this issue. It's got Snyder, like I said, it's got Snyder credited. I think Snyder's just credited in the sense that he's like he's like a writer editor. I think in that, hey, you need to make sure you're kind of you mention these things because they kind of mention what's going on in Eternal, the fact that Gordon's locked away, and that Batgirl's run off and doing some different things and all this different stuff. Kind of mentions all the Batman Eternal stuff, but this just tells its own story. It's kind of a one and done Batman story, of him dealing with a crazy killer, and it's nice and simple, and I really liked it. I think Duggan is the guy who's going to be writing the Arkham book that's going to be coming out. And I really liked it. It was just a straightforward, nothing special Batman story in one issue. And like I said, I really liked the art. The art was very good. I enjoyed it quite a bit. So I don't know. I know a lot of people are so burnt out on the whole zero-year thing that a lot of them are, dropping Batman and whatnot. But not me. I'm hanging around. It was a fun Batman story. It was nice to see. It was nice to immediately notice that it wasn't Scott Snyder's Batman voice too. It's kind of nice because I have to admit I'm kind of fatigued after the whole zero-year thing too, and I'm a bit weary of what the next stuff that's going to come, what the next big arc that's going to be from the regular team, the regular creative team on Batman. So this was a nice break from that, without being out of continuity and stuff. So, and that's it for my DC books. All of them are Bat oriented, I guess, except for Suicide Squad. Pretty sad.
And I'm sure Batman will make an appearance in Suicide Squad. So
hopefully.
Yeah.
But on to DC news. Of course, Schippernaut mentioned that the Aquaman film announcement. So we got to confirm that. I cannot remember the guy's name.
Game of Thrones guy.
Game of Thrones guy, the big beefcake guy with the beard. He is going to be Aquaman. And everybody's like, "Oh, Aquaman's going to be in the latest movie, the Superman versus Batman movie." No, Aquaman is not going to be in that movie. Aquaman is going to have its own movie. Of course, I've also heard that Aquaman currently has 2 scriptwriters writing that movie. So I don't know. Do they have 2 people competing for who's going to write the best script? Or what? I'm not sure. Because when it comes to movie news, I only dig so deep because it's movies. And they're never like my comics. So I think he's interested.
Yeah, the information keeps changing. I mean, it's all
right
until it's like confirmed saying. So.
Yeah, until we see the commercials for the movie, who knows? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting choice. I mean, I'm curious: is he going to stay dark-haired, or are they going to make him a blonde like Arthur? I'm all for him if he's going to have that same sort of a look, the longer, wavier hair, the beard, and whatnot. That's cool. I actually liked that Aquaman. I liked the more, I don't know what you want to call him, wild-looking Aquaman versus whether he has the hook or not, I don't care.
Yeah.
But I like the look of that Aquaman versus the clean-cut, blonde Superman Aquaman that we get. Aquaman's one of those things where I'm sure you could do some really cool stuff, and and of course I'm on record plenty of times picking on Aquaman, and I really don't hate the character. The character is an interesting character. It's just one of those characters that I fit into the stereotype. It's fun to pick on him.
Yeah.
I still have a hard time envisioning an Aquaman movie holding its own, in the same way that I have a hard time envisioning an Ant-Man movie holding its own for Marvel. To me, those seems like really strange characters to make a movie out of. Maybe a TV show, but a movie? How are you going to make Aquaman an exciting enough character to draw the type of crowds that that obviously Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Guardians of the Galaxy have drawn on their openings. I don't see how how you're going to do that.
They're going to have a talking crab and a starfish that are going to be his co-fighters, and
So,
you know,
right. So what you're saying is they're actually going to dye his hair red, and he's going to have a fish tail, and he's going to
yeah,
sing.
yeah,
Well, then I get it then.
yeah. They figured if they can make a tree and a raccoon fight and make billions, why not? Why don't
Oh, but yeah, I mean, but all seriously, I don't. I mean, I think that actor could be a really cool, a really, kick-ass tough Aquaman. But I have a hard time in my brain envisioning an exciting 2-hour movie of Aquaman, which is why I don't pick up Aquaman books, because I have a hard time envisioning long-term that being an interesting story. He's an interesting character. I just don't know what kind of story you tell that's gonna have me that interested. I like Aquaman with the Justice League. He's an interesting character. I don't not interested enough to read him on his own, I guess. But when an Aquaman movie comes out, inevitably I'll watch it, I'm sure. I won't be there on opening night, I can't imagine, but I'm sure I will go to the movies and see it because it's a superhero movie. But at the same time, I don't know.
I did pick up the first trade of Aquaman, and I liked it. I liked what they did with him. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, do they make a little bit of fun of him, and do they tackle it that way? Maybe that's what they need to do. So,
instead of going the more Prince Namor Submariner route, where he's a badass. Yeah. I don't know.
You make him tough, but everybody jokes about him, and then he has to prove himself.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's definitely a way of doing it. I think personally they should make him like the last Brave and the Bold cartoons. That version of Aquaman. Have you seen those?
No, that's all I could think of.
Where he's like, he's really cheesy, smiling all the time, and he like says outrageous to everything. He's just a real kind of a ham.
All right.
Anytime there's a story told, it's always from his perspective, and of course he's always the superstar and whatnot. He is hilarious. He's like the best thing about those cartoons. If they made that, I'd be all over that. But that would be making very light of the character, so I can't imagine that that's going to be the case. But that would be damn funny. If they made it a comedy, that would be damn funny.
And you wait, that's what's going to happen. They'll make a bad Aquaman movie. They'll make the Deadpool movie right after and show them, hey, you should have made the Brave and the Bold.
Yeah. That would be funny. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know as far as that goes. Don't know. Let's see. I'm thinking there's other DC news important to some of the people like me who read Batman and Robin. I don't know if it's going to make an impact or not on Batman and Robin, but I saw today announced that starting in November, Tomasi, who's the writer of Batman and Robin, will be writing Superman Wonder Woman. So obviously Charles Soule is leaving that book. Tomasi will be taking over. I don't know if that means he's done with Batman and Robin, or is he going to write 2 books? I can't imagine he's going to be done with Batman and Robin because they're just resurrecting Robin. But I don't know. That has me worried in the back of my head that means there's an end to Batman and Robin, which is a bummer because that's a great book, or at least I really enjoy it. But that's just my speculation, no actual rumor or anything like that. That's just my wonder if that's what's happening with the announcement of that. So I thought that was curious. But I can't think of any other real impactful DC news that we haven't really already talked about in some sense or another over the last couple of weeks. Do you think of anything?
Nope.
We'll have more to talk about in a couple of weeks because September, I think, some of the new TV shows start back up again in September, right? And then some in October.
Yeah. Because I know Constantine is October around Halloween.
Right. But I think it's
Arrow start earlier than that.
Right. The Flash.
7 weeks for the Arrow, yeah.
Yeah, and the Flash and and Shield. So we'll. Yeah. I can't remember when Gotham starts. So we could have
early October.
As I say, we could have plenty of TV to talk about if we choose to watch all those shows when we get to that point. So, anyway. So independent books. What do you got? What do you got?
You say independent, but I just watched DaCosta, where he pulled it out and said, "All right, no capes. No, I mean."
Yeah, he owes me some money. I want my royalties.
Um, I got the second Devilers,
Mm.
and in this one they explore a little bit more on each individual person, a little bit of their history, a little bit of their power, and it's pretty good. It shows they each have a skill set, and they finally get to the Catholic priest who he says, well, mine is to be able to see the demons, to see the evil. And they said, we all see the evil. You have a different power. And then they reveal a big one. And I don't, people may not have read it. I don't want to spoil that part. I'll talk about it after the next one comes out. But they actually climb down from the Vatican into hell. So they're fighting demons left and right. So, good storyline. I really like what powers they give each person and starting to learn about them. But it's just getting to know their names. It's 7 of them, so it's going to be tough to get everybody in and keep it figured out. So, but I definitely, I mean, I recommend it. It's that good indie feel art. It's a wonderful story. I should say beautiful. It's a good storyline. It's just keeping you right on the edge because they keep giving you enough, and maybe even a little bit more than enough, and that's what I like about it.
Okay, I'm gonna backtrack just a second here because
Yep, yep.
I'm looking at my comments on my actual YouTube page, trying to catch up because I know people are making comments and I just can't read them. So what I can see is about Tomasi, the whole writing, the Superman, Wonder Woman. Carlos is telling us that as far as he knows, that he's continuing to write Batman and Robin. That's kind of what I suspect too. Just not sure. Sherpanaut says it sounds like Aquaman will make an appearance in the Batman and Superman. And see, I didn't think that was the case. I thought he wasn't going to appear at all in that. But what Sherpanaut's saying is that he heard that he's pissed over what happened to the ocean and the terraforming machine that Zod brought. Atlantis makes itself known and declares a massive war against the surface dwellers. Yeah, so I don't know if that's what's going to be or not. That'll be interesting to see if that's the case. But I don't know how are they going to fit all that into one movie. It just sounds like the Superman versus Batman movie is going to basically be a giant introduction to the entire DC universe, and not actually have a plot. I don't know. It's starting to make me nervous. It's starting to make me nervous. So we'll see. We'll see what that ends up being. I don't know.
Talking about movies and all that. The one thing I went and saw Planet of the Apes, and what was funny is at the end of the movie, the light stayed dark as they're rolling through some of the credits, and everybody sat there and watched, waiting for is there something else.
Right.
It shows how much Marvel is doing now that there's this. Well, we know that they do it at the end. Are we supposed to sit?
Right.
It's interesting to see how that is changing movie watching now.
Yeah. Nobody leaves the theater as the credits are running. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you never know. Because you'd hate to leave and then find out there was that damn, thing at the very end where we got to see the Avengers eating trauma or whatever.
Shawarma.
Yeah. It's pretty funny. So I picked up Coffin Hill. Still really enjoying Coffin Hill. The story is more, I don't know if fragment is the word I want to use, but the story bounces around between timelines a lot more in this issue. We get some more information on her as the cop with the murders that she's trying to investigate. We get the current timeline, 3 different places there's a current timeline. Back at the Coffin Hill house where there's a girl trapped inside the house, and there's some particularly scary-looking monster, demon, deep ones, Shuggoth, whatever they are, things chasing her down, and she's following a voice that keeps telling her which direction to run. There's a young girl who's kind of a punk-looking girl from the current era who was in the house with this other girl but left her behind. We find out that she is the younger sister of one of the characters who in the first arc of this was our mentally ill patient who went crazy after some stuff happened as teens. We also get There's a couple other, I can't remember off the top of my head. But our police chief is on his way to the prison to meet with her, who's locked in prison right now. We now get the impression that she's being charged with having killed this other police detective, but it also sounds like they can't find that police detective too, like the body disappeared or something. But somehow they have enough circumstantial evidence to potentially keep her in jail and in prison and whatnot. I still absolutely love the art. I think it's interesting. There's some of the nasties that are in the house,
Yeah.
and they're particular. Like I said, they're particularly graphic, gory, and frightening. But I love it. I love this story. I think it's great. It's one of my favorite books to read, quite honestly. It's just the different pieces of it are compelling enough, and like I said, I love the art. So curious to see how it all ends. This arc ends, but it's been pretty cool. What other indie books did you pick up?
Archer and Armstrong. It continues along with the hotel. I'm trying to think. The Hotel California feel, where it's the all the famous people are still there. Elvis did steal a car and was driving away, but at that point, people were forgetting who he was, so he started to dissolve away and got an auto accident. And it is always an interesting storyline. They steal some parts for this time machine that has the power to rewrite the world. It's almost like Six Gun in that way, I guess you would say. But it also has a time travel component, so now it's this artist vision of what happens when you travel through time, and they keep meeting the other Archer and Armstrongs who have existed. It's was it always them? Was it how does that work out? But it's basically they keep living this life, and I think Armstrong is immortal, and Archer keeps getting reborn. I missed some. I got like the first 5 issues. I missed a bunch in the middle, and now I'm starting this up again.
Mm-hmm.
It's always funny. It's beautiful artwork, and it was hilarious. Yeah, to see them go back in time, and they were leaving clues for themselves and for this other guy, Jim Morrison,
Right. Nice.
from The Doors, is who they're up against. That's the evil bad guy.
Right on.
And so he steals this machine, but they had been hiding fake pieces, and because of that, then the machine doesn't work right, and he gets destroyed and sent away. And they're like, "Oh yeah, but don't you remember all the little jokes we did with each other?" And I'm like, it was just, it's funny, it's light, it's great.
I keep hearing that's a book I should be picking up because of that. That's just kind of it tongue-in-cheek with itself and whatnot.
Yeah, it is. It's good. And like I said, I did the first 5. I missed a bunch in the middle, but I picked it up again. And you still get a good enough sense. They reference just a little bit to old issues, but that's just kind of a nod to, you've kept with us, here's this, now here's the rest of the story. So, yeah, I liked it.
Them fighting the Lizard King.
Yeah, it was pretty good at that. So.
Another book I picked up was FBP, Federal Bureau of Physics. Kind of comes to the end of a storyline of our main characters being trapped in an alternate dimension that's being powered by one of the 2 main characters. Her kind of will and desires have kind of taken control of this dimension. They do inevitably end up breaking out of that in this, and they discuss the larger game that is afoot as far as who's hunting them. There's these higher powers that are out, potentially having the ability to manipulate these dimensional rips and tears and stuff. I still really enjoy the book. I still really like the artwork in it. I love the characters that are in it, Rosa and Adam. Rosa has, I think, been a huge asset to the story. She just adds a level of complexity because of her character, and the main thing about her character is that her mother is from this dimension, and technically as a fetus she's from our dimension, but right before she was born, right at birth, her mother and her were pulled through in a rip into another dimension, and we don't see her for 20 years, and then suddenly 20 years later she is dumped back into our dimension, and so she feels like she's out of place in our dimension. Technically this is where she's from, but she's not from here, kind of a thing, and she has a heavy desire to get back to where she's at, and she's just really kind of strange and socially awkward. They live about a week in this kind of pocket dimension that they've created with their minds inside this deprivation tank. And while they're in there, the two characters have kind of a romantic relationship. And of course, none of it was real, or was it, kind of a thing. And so now they're out of the tank. They were already kind of awkward people anyway. Now it's even more awkward because they have that lingering, you got really drunk and slept with somebody, you wake up the next morning, that awkward, not that I've had that experience, but that kind of awkward thing, except they work together and they're with each other all the time, and so now they've got this whole, they both dreamed it, but it wasn't a dream, so it didn't really happen, but it did happen, kind of. So it just makes everything even more awkward between them, which is kind of interesting from an emotional kind of tug of war between the two of them, along with the whole dynamics that are going on with this manipulation of physics and what's happening, like the greater scheme of things, as Adam is trying to hunt down his dad's final paperwork to find out what happened to his dad. So it's kind of cool. I'm really digging it. I don't know how many people are still picking the book up. That's issue 13. I think it's been an interesting book.
I got Judge Dredd Anderson's Psi Division.
Mm.
It's one of those things where, I on the YouTube comic book channel, a bunch of European, British people have been talking about Judge Dredd, and the big issues, the mega, and I'm like, and I've read some of the re-releases that IDW did, and it always seems like a tough point to figure out where to jump on.
Right.
Even though you really could just jump on from what I hear most spots.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to do this. It's about their Psi Division. She tries to stop a robbery that occurs that she gets precog information about. So she shows up at this bank and they steal, and there's a psychic explosion. I gotta say, I just love the beautiful art in it. It was really well done, and that was jump back real quick and see the artist is Carl Kitchrow, written by Matt Smith. After Judge Anderson decides to pursue these people, they've left Mega City and they've traveled to the swamps of the south. So evidently you can leave the Mega City. She goes to the Texas Mega City, which is basically just the state of Texas, and then they go into the swampland of like Louisiana, Mississippi, all that. And they say, we're going to lose communication. This person has another psi power that she's with who has an ability to kind of feel the territory. And so they're hunting these 3 criminals down to figure out what's going on, what they stole. Just good. I mean, it's exploration of Anderson. So it's nice. She's still a judge. She's got her gun. She's not that crazy super toughness of Dredd, but
right.
It still touches on the the mutants and the Psi and mega cities, and now they're outside of it. So it's interesting. I don't really know a whole lot on that. So it's been a good exploration. I think it's going to give me a good jumping point if I decide to go into the whole Dredd series. So
cool. Yeah, I haven't read any Judge Dredd since like '87. So so yeah, I don't know tons about it either. But yeah.
I
Uh,
collected. There was a 4 issue like year one that they did with him,
mm-hmm.
and psychic powers. So I mean, once again, it touched onto this. It was before they brought Anderson character, and I've liked it. So I figure now might be the time to explore a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. I just remember back in the day when I was a kid, it just being just a brutal comic
Yeah,
of Judge Dredd just blasting people all the time. It was pretty. At the time, it seemed pretty basic that you even remotely thought you did wrong, you just got blasted to pieces, and that was as he rode around
yeah,
in his really cool bike, just annihilating people. So
yeah.
I mean I know there's more to it than that, but that's at the time as a kid, that's what I took away from it. But
Yeah.
yeah. Red Abe Sapien. This is issue number 15. It's kind of a one shot, and
I almost
it's
got that.
yeah, it still addresses Abe Sapien and the question that this whole run has really kind of been about of who is he, what is his place in the world, kind of a thing. But this one's set in the past. This one's set back in 2007, 2005. I mean, 2005. Back when he has taken himself out of the field. As far as being a field operative, he's a scientist. It's recently after he's discovered who he believes he is, who ultimately was. He discovers that he is a scientist from the Civil War era, that he's not an experiment himself, that he actually is the scientist. He did something to himself in some sense, and he's this man. So he's kind of going back to being a scientist. He's not out in the field. And this guy here, Roger, is a Simulcrean. He's a living giant lump of clay, basically. And he's still out in the field. They used to be the best of buds. We went on all kinds of adventures together, and some of the early BPRD stuff. They were the team, and so there's some dialogue between them about knowing what your past is, and does that define who you are? I mean, because like I said, Abe has just recently discovered who he thinks he is, but for the last 30 years he's operated himself as Abe Sapien, this amphibious man. But to discover that for hundreds of years he's been this other man, it's messing with him, and so he's kind of hiding in his lab and doing experiments on stuff, whereas Roger is saying, well, so what? I knew the second I was awoken and came to life, I knew exactly who my creator was and what I was, and he's the type of guy that right now we would hunt him down and kill him if he existed today. And that doesn't stop me from being the man I am now and doing the right thing and moving on with my life. What's your problem, Abe? Why don't you do that? So that's the internal stuff that's going on there. Of course, it being what it is, there's also a big gnarly, Chthonian type monster that pops up in this and takes control of some people, and you see some early. There's an agent named Vaughn who gets messed with pretty hardcore in this, and at the end of this, he questions who he is. So the theme continues. I will give credit to Mike Mignola and probably Scott Alley more, who does, I think, most of the scripting. Mignola comes up with the story idea, and other people script it for him. In keeping this theme, keeping a pretty constant theme of exploration of who you are as a person, that theme gets used a lot in this issue. For every character that's just about in it is questioning what that is, and so I like it for that. Beyond the monster Chthonian Lovecraft, thing that goes bump in the night that tends to always be in these books. So, but there's some crazy stuff of the half tentacle getting a hold of one of them and controlling them and stuff. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, because I grabbed it off the shelf and I thought about it. Do you think, is that a jumping on point, or do you really kind of need to go back? Because I got that trade.
Yeah,
and I thought that was really good.
If you don't know anything about these characters, I don't know this is a jumping on point, because it's going to be really confusing. I mean, if you don't know, Abe Sapien from, Batman, I don't know. I don't think this is going to be really new reader friendly, because if you don't have some sense as to who he is, who Roger is, it, for that, for the parts that I really liked about this issue, you aren't going to get that, I don't think, because you're not going to really understand the dynamics that are there and in place. Um, the monster end of it will be cool because if you like that kind of, if you like those kinds of monster horror and stuff, that part's there. But that other aspect of it, I think is lost.
Because I got the two movies, the two cartoon movies also.
Uh,
So I got those four, and then I grabbed the Abe Sapien trade, and I loved it.
right.
I was just never a
Well,
big fan of the art of the original Hellboy,
oh.
and so that's why I was wondering,
Oh,
you
okay.
know,
Well, if you have the first trade, if you have the first trade of the Abe Sapien run,
yeah,
you would be okay getting this. I mean, because
all right,
that trade gives you enough sense of who Abe is and what he's up to, roaming across the countryside and whatnot. That this would be okay. You would be
all
okay
right,
with this. But this is just this has, other than the theme of who am I, that's carried through over into this issue. But like I said, this issue is all set in the past, whereas the rest of the Abe Sapien book is contemporary, 2014.
all right,
This is set back in 2005,
yeah,
kind of a thing.
all right,
Um, you know, it would be fine. It wouldn't be that confusing in that
all right,
sense then.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I also picked up Blackout, and it's a Dark Horse comic.
Hmm.
It's 4 of 4, and so because of I hadn't been collecting, but then I looked and I saw that they had 1, 2, and 3, so
Oh.
snagged all of those. That's what made for the large stack this week. Um, it felt like I got in the middle. It felt like it was a sub comic of something else that was running. So I'm going to try and find that out. But otherwise, it starts you out in the middle of the story, and we've seen that before, and it's fine. Start us out, then go back, but they don't go back. It's just here you are in the middle of the story, and then it just keeps rolling until it gets to the fourth issue where they resolve it to a point, and then it seems like there's going to be more. And if that's the case, don't tell me 1 out of 4
Yeah.
or 4 out of 4 or whatever. Plus, there's also it's an interesting book. I mean, it's uh, a scientist who works for a company. He tends to be kind of just a tech guy, but there's something that happens at the lab. He finds the suit is delivered to um, his apartment, and it says "Find me." So he puts on the suit. He goes to the lab. It allows him to travel into a dimension that's just slightly off from where we are. So he walks around in this darkened, blackout kind of room, and his goggles light it up so he can see. It's immensely cold, so it plays on that freeze dimension or cold dimension or dark dimension that we see, like Cloak from Cloak and Dagger and some of those
Hmm.
people have.
Hmm.
And he basically creates these portal holes where he can pull people into it, and then they start freezing instantly. So it's almost like as cold as space, I would presume. They have trouble breathing, and then he has to drop them back out to keep them alive. But he travels, he walks around. The suit has enough power, so it's almost like a Iron Man suit. It needs to absorb energy all around him all the time. So if he's
Hmm.
out in the desert, that's when he found out he didn't have any power, but he had a phone, and he turns his phone on. And it sucks the energy from the phone. He can get out of that situation back into the world.
Ah.
Uh, they bring in these corporation brings in these 3 Germans who put on these power suits, and they're telling the company how they're going to do things. He gets back into the lab, and he has to fight them. So the whole part, you're just feeling like there's so much more to this story. Where is it going? Where did it come from? And then at the end, he takes care of the main bad guys, but he still hasn't found the professor or who sent him the suit and what caused the major accident. So it did feel bad in that sense that it wasn't a complete story.
Mm.
Also, halfway through, you also get a second story, Tiger King. And Tiger King is a story about a soldier in Afghanistan who gets injured on the night run. He gets back pain. He can't get rid of his back pain. He gets kicked out of the service because he's over medicating himself. He goes to a mystic, the Tiger King, to say, I'm at that point where just whatever. I don't care about its mysticism. Fix me. Um, all of a sudden, the demon that's actually latched onto his back shows itself, and the Tiger King helps him fight this demon that's latched on. Did you ever watch the Venture Brothers?
Huh?
The one where Dr. Venture goes to Japan, upsets somebody, and has the floating demon that follows him around?
Right.
That's what it is. It's that kind of floating female crazed demon that only
Right.
people that are mystics can see. And I mean, as soon as you saw it, it reminded me of Venture Brothers. So
Cool.
it was at least it was a good story. It showed you the beginning. He fought it, in these few short issues. It's all four stretched through, and at the end, it resolves itself, and you're like, oh, that was a nice little story. I don't know that I would follow this any further, but
Mm.
that at least tied itself up. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's written because it's Dark Horse. Maybe it's written in the same fashion that like the Baltimore books are written, the Lobster Johnson books are written, where they write them in short, like 3 or 4 or sometimes 5
Right.
issues, and that'll be like whatever it is, and then 3 or 4 months from now they'll have Blackout something else, and
Okay.
it'll be part of the run, but it's kind of put out in little spurts.
All right.
I'm going to be talking about Lobster Johnson. This is Lobster Johnson, Get the Lobster, and it was 5 issues long. But there's been lots of Lobster Johnson stories told, and that's
All
just
right.
kind of how they tell them. They tell them in these like vignettes. You get 4 or 5 issues. That's a story for now, and then at some point they'll tell another story. So maybe that's what they're planning on doing with
Okay.
with that. And some of those stories, to be quite honest, are more satisfying than others. The
Right.
ones that I read, I really like the characters. So whatever they have the character doing, I have fun reading it because I like the characters and the settings that they're in and stuff. Some of them are much stronger stories than others are. Some of the all of the Baltimore stuff has been excellent. I think there's been ones where it's just been like single issues and they just absolutely blow my socks off. I really like the character Lobster Johnson, but some of the Lobster Johnson stories, some of them have definitely been better than others. They all have great moments in them, but some of them have been better, stronger stories than some of the others. But
Right.
and that, like I said, that may just be how Dark Horse presents them as little miniseries. That way, they can take a break anytime they want to. The break can be, a couple months until they decide what they're doing next, or the artist and writer get caught up, and then they release another group of stories. So maybe that's what
Right.
they're planning on doing with that,
Okay.
based on the appeal. Sounds like Sherpanaut likes it. Sherpanaut says Blackout is a fun character, as far as my comments that are
Yeah.
loading. So
All right.
sounds cool. I mean, as far as that goes, I haven't ventured into any of Dark Horse's superhero line. I know like 2 years ago they announced that they're going to start getting serious about producing a superhero line. They announced it at the Seattle Emerald City Comic Con that I was at 2 years ago, that they're going to start really vitalizing their superhero line. They're going to get serious about going back into superheroes. And they kind of tied, they started, producing some of these other superhero books. And I don't know if that's ever really taken off for them, but I know they're trying. And that was part of that. I know the Blackout stuff was part of that whole
All right.
them trying to do that. So
I'll have to do some more research on that. Sherpanaut, if you know any more, please drop it in the comments. I'll definitely read the comments later. I'm
yeah,
hoping to
check
find
it.
out more. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's gonna be. All right. So speaking of which, Lobster Johnson, Get the Lobster, 5 of 5. Took a long time for this issue to come out. I believe there were some issues. The artist had some problems, and so it took a while to get this out. Normally, Dark Horse is pretty good about being consistent and hitting their release dates and whatnot, but this one was shaky. So it seemed like quite a ways between the last issue and this issue, enough that it took me a little bit to remember. I remember some of the basics of what was going on, but what was going on at the exact moment that the last issue ended and this one started, I was kind of, okay, it's been long enough. It took a little bit for that to come back to me. This was a fine set of stories. I liked the last one better, I think, than this one, but this one was still enjoyable. It ended in typical Lobster Johnson fashion with him confronting one of the main villains that he is running into, and it being very explosive and very violent, which how most of these books end up, stories end up, you know, in some sense he is in some level of shootout. You know, how big the monster is or how diabolical the whole thing is depends on which story it is. You know, in this case, there's a Hindenburg moment in here with a blimp that he is on. And so it continues to lead me to believe that obviously he's not indestructible, but darn near close to it. He gets hurt, but somehow he survives. I mean, literally in this, a blimp blows up and he's on top of it when it blows up. And somehow he comes out of it mangled, but he still comes out of it. So I'm really curious as to if at some point, or maybe if somebody's watching this that is familiar with this, like you know, Nate, if he's watching and is familiar, because I don't have the actual Hellboy issues or BPR issues where we first see this character. Because when we're first introduced to this character, he's already dead. He's a ghost, and after we get him as a ghost, then the creators decide, hey, it'd be kind of cool to go back into the 1940s and, you know, pre-World War II, right before World War II, and tell these stories. And so that's what we're getting reading this. I'm even more curious as to how did the guy die to become a ghost, because, like I said, he has been through some serious stuff and somehow managed to come out the other side of it. So, you know, an enjoyable story. The back history, because a lot of this Get the Lobster is based on the fact that a contact that he has, this woman who works for the newspaper, has been writing an expose on the lobster, kind of writing what his supposed family history is, or maybe it is. And it's interesting to hear that. That was the most interesting thing about the story, was this kind of backstory of the generations of lobsters that are out there and stuff, and what that entails is pretty cool. You know, plus the villain he's fighting in this thing is kind of great, because the villain in this uses mind control, but how he uses mind control is he actually is lobotomizing people and putting like radios in their head. And because, of course, it's the 1940s, it's, you know, big giant tubes and stuff. So they're missing parts of their brain, and when they open up their head, they literally have these big giant transistors and those big, you know, well, kids nowadays don't have a clue, but back in the old days, there were these, you know, tubes that energy went through, you know, the transistors and stuff, and so that's in their heads. It's just all kind of crazy and cool, but it's kind of fun, you know, pre-World War II pulp with some mysticism thrown in, Lobster Johnson kind of stuff. So yeah, it's fun. Yeah, it's fun.
And are you sure it was a blimp, or is it a Zeppelin?
It's a Zeppelin. It's filled with hydrogen, hydrogen bladders that go boom. Sorry. to be technical, yeah. Yep. But
oh, I know that's what our fans demand. So.
Oh yeah, us to be officially have it all technical. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry for all you Zeppelin enthusiasts. I apologize.
You just lost 3, so.
No. I lose subscribers every day, so what else is new? So it's not that; it's for something else. So.
Yeah.
Any other?
No, I'm tapped out. That was it. All the extra blackouts were.
Yeah. The last indie book I picked up is Six Criminals, issue number 7. You know, the scandalous book that it is. I'm still enjoying this. I will say that the magic of the first couple issues, the charm of those issues, is gone to some degree. And I'm not sure if it's where the story's at right now, or if it's the fact is that the two main characters, their relationships at a point relationships that I don't like, and so they capture, maybe that's good enough. It's good writing that it captures this kind of sense of, you know, the honeymoon's over, now what kind of a thing, that has a certain level of uncomfortableness that is, like I said, is good writing, but at the same time, I'm not enjoying this part of the relationship as far as that goes. Um, I worry that the book is going to fall into, and not to upset any fans that are enjoying the hell of this book and enjoy the letters page. I don't read the letters pages at all in this. The letter pages are like 4 or 5 pages long in this book. That's how much letters they get, and they dedicate extra pages in this thing to the letters page. And I'm just kind of worried that they're going to do too much fan service as opposed to telling the story that they originally were planning on telling. I'm a bit worried that they're getting sucked into their, I don't want to say hype because hype's not the right word, but I don't know what word I want to use, but just that they're getting pulled into everybody talking about their sexuality however they want to, which is fine. I mean, that's great. The lyric climb's there. That's cool. And I guess if that's what the whole fan base wants for the book, awesome. It's going where it should go then, because I mean, obviously you want to entertain your fans. I'm not sure that's what I want though, because the letters column, like I said, I quit reading it because it gets a bit ridiculous into stuff that I don't. I'm not that I'm a prude or don't want to hear it. It's just not what I'm interested in. I want to hear the story that the creators intended on telling, and I'm just worried that maybe we're slipping away from that story and into too much fan service. But I could be wrong. I mean, that could be what their intention was all along. There are great moments in the book. It just doesn't have the same, and I'll keep getting it, and I'm not like I'm not getting it, but it doesn't have the same spark that the first couple issues felt like it had for me. And like I said, that may just be due to the fact that we're getting into some of the darker aspects of one of the characters' personalities and why he is the way he is. That it's not the sexual part that's uncomfortable. It's just he obviously did not have a great life, and so it's written well. It's kind of one of those traffic accident kind of things where you don't really want to watch the traffic accident, but you can't turn away, kind of a thing. So I don't know. I don't know where I'm at with the book. I'm enjoying it, despite it making me uncomfortable. And it's not the sex part of it that makes me uncomfortable. It's just, like I said, how crappy parts of their lives were and might potentially be, that it's kind of a downer, I guess. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but that's what it is for me.
That cover felt very Lock and Key to me.
Yeah, that's a weird cover. I mean, I think what that is that's the house. There's this group of people that they basically refer to as the sex police, and I think there's a lady, they call her the Kegel face because she, whatever. Anyway, if you're yeah. So they call her Kegel face, and I think this is her house, and I think that's the guy character because he invades her house. He sneaks into her house, kind of as revenge, just to screw with her. I mean, he goes in, he's like half eating her fruit and stuff like that, just to kind of mess with her, because he's so pissed that basically that they screwed with them and made their lives miserable. So he's gonna make their lives miserable, and then he gets in there, and then he feels kind of uncomfortable for being there. That maybe he shouldn't be violating them in this. Not that he's really. I get nervous using the word violate when the book is called Sex Criminals. He's not doing anything hellacious like that. I mean, he's just there moving crap around, like I said, taking bites out of the apples and putting them back just to screw with her, to go, I was here.
Yeah.
And then he kind of feels bad about doing that. That you really shouldn't be screwing with people in that way. And then he finds out some other stuff and decides, forget it, I'm going to screw with them all I want to. But I don't want to give away the story, for I know that people out there are reading it and whatnot. But that's an odd cover though.
Yeah.
But so that's it for my indie books.
Yep, that's it for me.
Anything else comic booky type thing we want to talk about?
I was talking with one of my officers. He was one of my coworkers, a retired guy, and he was like, "Oh, I went and saw Guardians of the Galaxy." Totally not who I would think would go to it, but it just shows that their marketing and all the work they put into it and word of mouth have reached everybody. That I don't know if he saw it on ESPN, if he just heard everybody talking about it, but he went to a movie I don't think he would have ever have gone to before otherwise. And so
Yeah.
I think on that point, they're doing something right.
Did he recognize it as being a comic book movie? A movie based on comic book characters? Any
To be
idea?
true, I don't know. Actually, I'd have to ask him again, but I don't believe he did. I think he just saw it as another Star Wars. So,
Yeah, but I think it's how most people are going to it. I mean, obviously, us as comic book collectors and comic book readers know the source material, but I think as a general rule, people don't care what the source material is. Or in the case of like my son who's 16, his friends will come to him and go, "Yeah, I saw this movie, whatever," and then they'll, a couple weeks later, they'll go, "Did you know there's a comic book about that movie?" And of course, because my son gets indoctrinated by me, he's like, "No, it's the other way around. The comic book was first." Like they'll come to him and go, "Oh my gosh, did you know there's a comic book of V for Vendetta?" It's like,
yeah.
no, the source material is the comic book. But so yeah, obviously, I mean, in my opinion, like you're talking about, I just think that it goes to show that if people can get past it being a comic book and whatever hang up they might have about being a comic book, awesome stories get told in comic books. Incredible stories get told in comic books, whether it be in superhero comic books or it be in the quote-unquote no-capes comic books. There's comics out there for everyone that tell incredible stories. You just got to open up to. Of course, I'm preaching to the choir here because nobody's watching this, watching this hangout that isn't a comic book fan. But there's tons of stuff out there that everybody who thinks that comic books are uncool would probably really like, unless you just absolutely hate reading something that has pictures attached to it, that you would love. It's out there. It's out there for people. It just needs. The comic market needs to do a better job of convincing people that comic books are cool and comic books are okay and comic books have awesome things to say. Just as an example, of course, not very long ago, we all know Robin Williams, died, and he was a huge comic book fan. He absolutely loved comic books. He was a huge Transmetropolitan fan, absolutely loved that that series. When it was coming out, he would go into comic book stores to buy it, and the comic book stores would be emailing Warren Ellis to say, "Oh my gosh, Robin Williams was just in our comic book store. He bought your comic book," and I know that because Warren Ellis would be then, because I was on some boards that Warren Ellis was running at the time, and Warren Ellis would say, Robin Williams is out there buying my thing. He's had multiple conversations with Joshua Hale Falkoff, the guy who's writing, he's writing Bunker, he's writing Afterlife, he's writing Devilers, right?
So what was the name again?
Joshua Hale Falkoff, is he writing?
Yep, that was him.
He's a big fan. He's a big fan of Joshua's work. Cool people. At least I thought Robin Williams was a cool guy. Read comic books. They just need to convince enough of the general populace that there's cool stuff out there.
Yeah.
And we could get more cool stuff then.
Yeah, and that's the tough part is everybody doesn't realize it's the whole no capes aspect.
Yeah.
And it's the best kept secret in comic books.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for sure. For sure. But anyway, decent book a week of comics, yeah?
Yes. Yep.
I mean, I read, one or so that were marginal, but otherwise they were quite enjoyable. I'm not sure next week if we're going to have a comic book roundtable. Normally I have most of Friday to myself to read my books when I get them on Friday. I'm working all day on Friday, so I don't think I'll have the opportunity to read my books. So if there is a roundtable next week, more than likely I will host it on Saturday for anybody who's sticking around this late to watch this part of the show. So if you're wanting to watch it live, if there is a live show, which I haven't decided yet, if there is one for me, it would have to be on Saturday. Off air, I'll talk with Mike and we'll figure out if that's something we really want to do or skip a week or whatever. We'll see where that goes. Anything else you want to say, Mike?
Thank you again.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul.
Yep. Enjoy talking with you.
Yep.
Have a wonderful evening, afternoon, morning, whenever it is you happen to be watching this show, everybody. And thanks for watching and thanks for leaving comments. I'm sorry that my my comment refresher does not seem to want to refresh comments that quickly, so I can address more of them, but we'll try our best next week to see what we can do. Anyway, have a good one.